How you doing, man?
Very good. Thank you.
Oh my goodness, where do I start? There's so much. And I would imagine you've always been into design. Correct me if
Yeah.
I'm wrong. Is that the case? Did you know? Did you know like, okay, this is gonna be something I want to go into?
No, I thought I was
Okay.
gonna build robots and program them, and I even went to the university in my hometown of
Okay.
Denmark to study robotics. But half year into it, I was like, maybe this is not me. It's way too much math. So I ended up, I heard about this boarding school that was testing design, architecture, and art. And I just completely fell in love with the whole architecture aspect, the building industry, and so on. And it turned out I was good at it.
I would imagine that blends very well, like you said, to what you do. Like obviously it
Exactly.
worked out, it's worked out well, right?
Yeah. It's like the perfect fit for me right now, where I'm sort of in the cross field between architecture and engineering, being sort of an inventor of some kind.
You're the founder of the Big Ideas, right? That group or that area. So I would imagine that's weaved into everything you do, right? A lot of it is super exciting, but also super difficult. You're creating things that people don't think can be done.
Yeah, exactly. I would say all the projects that lies a little bit sort of outside normal architecture scope usually falls on my lap, and I try
Okay.
to sort of create solutions that we can tie into our built projects. We've had a few instances where the engineers didn't want to touch it, and in the end, we proved them wrong, and now it's sort of implemented in the architecture.
So now starting about that, like Mars is Science City, right? I initially when I was looking into it, I was like, oh, they're gonna live in Mars. I
Yeah,
didn't realize it was actually going to be a simulated city in Dubai.
yeah.
How did that come about? How did those projects even come about? I mean, obviously, I know a lot of them I know are commissioned, but how does that even work when someone comes up with a concept? And what is the process of you guys thinking like, okay, is this big enough? No pun
Yeah.
intended, but is this big enough for us to take on?
I think it's probably about 8 years, 9 years ago, and we were sort of talking about, what is our goals for the future, and one of the sort of the things that keeps repeating is that we want to be the ones that design the future, that design the world that we would love to live in. And of course, we can also see that space is
Yes.
sort of a frontier that is popping up more and more. So 8 years ago, we decided to be the ones that design architecture out in space. The first sort of commission that we gave ourselves was to look at space and create an architect guide to building in space. We call it the Architect's Guide to the Galaxy. And it
Gotcha.
looked
Okay.
at the different outer worldly bodies like the moon, Mars, where we can imagine one day flying to with people. And we wanted to sort of understand what would architecture on one of those planets or moons look like. So it
Yeah.
became this quite a fat book about architecture in space, and that led to the introduction to the Dubai Future Foundation and the UAE Space Center.
Yeah, I mean, really, you talk about speaking things into existence. You guys really, took it to a whole nother level because, from my understanding, it's like it's created in Mars likeness, right? I love the word now. The term I'm going to use it all the time, vernacular architecture, where it's created in the resources from the planet,
Yeah,
yet no one lives there. It's like this duality between what's existing and creating something entirely new because it's not habitated.
you could say that's maybe the was the biggest task of it all. We've all seen sort of science fiction uh, describing or illustrating what
Mhm.
a Martian city or moon city could look like. Uh, for us, when we look at architecture, we always take the location very seriously. So going to Mars, we have to learn what Martian architecture looks like. So it was almost like an anthropological study in what resources are there,
Mhm.
what is available, because we cannot fly an entire city of building materials from Earth to the surface
Tomorrow.
of Mars. And we found that the Martian dust that you find all over is very good for 3D printing. So you can actually 3D print a lot of your buildings on the surface of Mars.
So does that mean that the Mars Science City, is that going to be a 3D printed structure?
Yeah, it has to be a combination. You could say 3D prints or concrete, essentially, is not very good at keeping air out. It's not very airtight. So we need to combine it with big membranes like domes. But once you've created your dome that can keep the breathing air inside, then you actually have quite free hands to build a city here. But you also need to dig underground because there is quite a lot of radiation out on the surface of Mars.
I know this is supposed to be completed maybe in a couple of years or around 2024. Do you see yourself, once it's completed, obviously visiting, but do you see yourself visiting Mars one day?
I would definitely go if I was got the invitation to go either to Mars or Moon or just fly around the Earth a few times.
Well, it seems like, with the Hyperloop, Richard, you should have like a little inside track. It seems like you can be like, hey, we're working on this. I want to be one of the people.
Yeah, so essentially the Hyperloop is a tube that you take out the air from. When you fly in airplanes or even on the highway, there's a lot of air resistance. But if you have a tube and you suck out all the air close to vacuum, you don't have any air resistance. And as soon as you start pushing a vehicle in there, it will continue to run. You need to only need a very little energy to keep it going. So it's a very sustainable way of transporting people from A to B.
Do you think that's going to come into fruition? I mean, the idea and the concept is amazing because you can go from LA to San Francisco in like 45 minutes. I think it's like 600 miles per hour. Like it's mind blowing to think if you have the ability to travel at those speeds and get from point A to point B like that.
You could almost like expand the potential reach of cities because you can live in neighboring towns that usually are sort of a neighboring town, but suddenly they become suburbs of the place that you work. It really ties the countries together, or even regions like Europe. Everything would be within a 1 hour reach almost.
Is everything you guys do based on creating the future? I mean, it sounds like that's a common thread, and really not only creating it, but molding and shaping it. Is that one of the biggest, motivators behind all the projects you guys take on?
I think there's so much being built at any time, at any given time, all over the world, and such a small fraction of that is built by architects that try to push the boundaries. Of course, that also means that we have a responsibility to design good buildings. We have a responsibility to be pushing the boundaries for sustainable building mass on this planet. So of course, that is also a topic that we talk a lot about these days, that we have to build with the planet's resources in mind.
So, I mean, I would imagine all these different projects, although separate, right, in scope and even creativity, but I would imagine they all blend together. I mean, you went from like the Mars project, which is, you're still working on that, to NASA. Talk about that. Talk about how you go from these different projects. I would imagine all the data and information and the research you've got helps, upcoming projects.
For sure. Like the Architect's Guide to the Galaxies has definitely pushed our level of knowledge so that we are now able to speak with the really clever people at NASA and SpaceX and so forth about what it actually means. You can imagine living in a tin can on the moon, or like a metal cylinder. But the challenge is that if you want to live there for more than half a year, then the radiation really starts kicking in, and you need to be able to protect yourself better. And we can do that with different means. One very interesting fact is that water is a very good absorbent for radiation. So you could imagine living almost like in a fish tank, where windows was aquariums, where you could look through out into the nature. But that would be extremely efficient as a protection for the radiation coming from outside.
That's super cool. And so with the NASA project with the moon, So they're supposed to be able to. The goal is to be able to habitate or live there for up to a month, 30 days, or give or take.
It's true that NASA is now talking about landing on the moon and setting foot again with the first female, but also to stay there. So the first missions, of course, are going to be very sort of scientifically driven. But after a couple of years, we are expecting in about 8 to 10 years, we will send some machines, 3D printing robots that will start to print our habitats on the moon.
So in about 15 years, maybe 15 years, you're going to be able to go up there.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's going to be possible for all of us, even though it might be quite pricey. I think we can all visit the moon in 15, 20 years time.
Which is mind blowing. And what's crazy to me is you guys also created the headquarters for Suit Supply. And Suit Supply, I'm actually wearing a Suit Supply suit and shirt right now. So you guys do everything.
Yeah. The Suit Supply project was also one of mine, but it just kind of shows the range of projects that we're doing from outer space to suits.
To suits and everything in between. How do you get there? How do you transfer? Whether you want to live on the earth, move place to place, or and look good while you're doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
I hear you are really really a plant guy. This has come from someone that has never had a plant survive. So I can probably learn a thing or two or 20 from you.
Yeah, like my grandfather was a professor in botanics here in Denmark, and you could say my mother's generation, all of them know a lot about plants. I know a little bit less, but at some point, and this turned into an experiment about how many plants can you actually have in your own home before it becomes too much. And as you can see on the image, I'm sitting sort of in half a jungle here.
You said there's 47 species you believe there is?
Yeah,
how much you say you think
or something? Yeah, between 40 and 50. My daughter counted it the other day to 47.
You don't have to show us all 47, but if you want to show us a few, we'd love to see it.
Yeah. No, I can. I'll take you on a little tour. So we are currently in the office space with a little bit of a shelving system. If I turn the other way around here, it's like my little place where I've been working. But then we move through the forest into the clearing, which is
oh my goodness, you really... So and I heard you optimize the lighting for every single plant. Is that correct?
Yeah. I would say the trick is really to, of course, some plants really like to have a lot of daylight, so they are placed closer to the windows and further inside. If we go back to the space where I came from. Further in the middle of the house, that's of course where you have plants that are a little bit less light heavy. Maybe what I can show you is this chandelier that I created, which is sort of these upside down pot plants that you water from the top, and that sort of doubles as a chandelier in the evening. And then we out here in the, of course, we have a lot of bigger plants that also protect us a little bit, create a bit more privacy.
No, I mean, it looks amazing. Like I said, again, I've never had a plant live in my life. So now I know who to ask for plant advice.
I think that the trick is you just need to water your plants thoroughly one time a week. And you just water them until you see water in the saucer underneath the pot. Then you should be good.
I love it. So, I mean, obviously the projects you guys work on are so far in advance. From you talk about the book created that turned into what's coming next, and that turned into other work. What is next? I mean, it seems like you guys work on these, projects. You're literally, not only are you creating the future, but you're working on things that are 8 and 10 and 5 and 15 years in the future.
What we started a couple of years ago is what we call the big leap. The big leap is this idea of merging engineering, architecture, products, and landscape, because essentially those are the 4 areas that constitute sort of a majority of the work that you need to design buildings. So we are truly trying with the big leap, as we call it, to create a more holistic work.
Super exciting. Some of the projects, like I said, there were some, I think you guys had like 15 projects last year. It's like, there's so many things. Of course, I pick out a couple like the suit supply, but I guess I'll leave it at, if you ever get the chance to go to the moon or Mars and you have a +1, I'm nominating myself.
Yeah, I'm gonna let you know for sure.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.